Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Beckman's Breakdowns for 2025. Now, of course, no tournaments have happened yet. The Malaysia Open Super 1000 is set to begin tomorrow as I record this. However, as I looked over the coming year, I couldn't help but be left with a number of questions. Questions over players, questions over coaching teams, questions over who can win what, questions over can breakthrough players compound that breakthrough, questions over upcoming talent, questions over injuries, questions over absolutely everything. I just had so many swirling around in my mind that I felt, why not just do a video to open up this year going through some of them? So that's what I'm going to do in this video. I am only going to pick a few key questions. I'm not going to go through absolutely every single one of them. Otherwise, this video will make my usual stuff, which is long anyway, seem like a YouTube short. So yeah, that's the plan for this video. Let's get right into it. Okay, so the first topic that I want to talk about is coaching changes within the badminton world. To put it bluntly, there have been so many of these, far too many for me to talk about every single one of them in this video. So instead, I'm just going to focus on a couple of them. The first one being a huge change to the coaching lineup of two of badminton's powerhouse nations, Japan and Indonesia. Starting with Japan, the big one is that their head coach Park Ju-bong resigned at the end of 2024 to be replaced, by Hitoshi Ohori. This is huge because Park Ju-bong has been with the Japanese team for almost 2 decades, and he was the big reason, the mastermind behind Japan going from a team that would produce maybe the odd champion here or there in one or two of the disciplines to a team that had world number one pairs, world champions, all England champions, contenders at every single major in every single discipline. Park Ju-bong was the reason Japan went from a team that you would never consider for any of the major team competitions to always being the favourites at those team competitions. So his influence on the team, his impact on Japanese badminton is immeasurable. It is absolutely huge. So the fact that he's no longer there does obviously pose the question of how will this affect the Japanese team? Will it be a positive, or will it be a negative, or will there really be not much change at all? Obviously, this is not really a question I think we're going to get an answer to in 2025, but we might start to see some early signs. For me, a interesting one will be not just how will it affect the players, but will it affect the style that the Japanese team play with? Obviously, Park Ju-bong had a huge influence on the way that a lot of players have played. I've watched numerous amounts of interviews where whenever a Japanese player talks about Park Ju-bong, it's always talking about, basic technique, making no mistakes, a very Korean approach. So will that change now we've got Hitoshi Ohori at the helm? I don't know much about him in terms of his coaching style. Obviously, I'm not quite sure if he was also heavily influenced by Park Ju-bong, which obviously would answer that question, the fact that he would probably continue that on. But it is quite interesting to see how this change is going to affect the team as a whole, and will it affect Japanese badminton and the way that they play their game? Obviously, looking into that last part a little bit more detail, there's also been a number of coaching changes within their different departments. When I say that, I mean, I think 3 out of the 5 I know for sure have had their head coach change. The first one is the men's singles. Yosuke Nakanishi, the men's singles head coach for Japan, who's been in that role for 8 years. He's the guy that we always see behind the court of Kenta Momota, like Kanta Tsuneyama, Kenta Nishimoto. He has resigned. I don't know who's taking over his position. Maybe it's opening it up for Kenta Momota, but that would be pretty cool. But I'm pretty sure that he looks pretty settled in his coaching role at his club for the moment. Another big change is that Jeremy Gann, who is the head coach for the mixed team, has also resigned. Again, I also don't know who's going to take over from that role, but that's quite interesting. It kind of coincides with a huge change in Japanese mixed as a whole. So maybe a fresh coach with fresh new pairings, quite exciting to see. And then in the men's doubles, Tan Kim Her has also resigned, and he's moved back to India. I do know who has replaced Tan Kin-he, and I'm extremely excited by this one because it's Hiroyuki Endo, one of Japan's most successful men's doubles players. All England champion, very successful player, obviously most people these days would know him for his partnership with Yuta Watanabe, but he had a successful partnership with Kenichi Hayakawa as well. It'd be really interesting for me to see how Endo influences the new players in Japan. Like their mixed doubles, I feel like their men's doubles is also going through a little bit of a change. We're getting the new generation coming in. Obviously, we still got Hoki and Kobayashi as their leading pair, but beneath that, there's a number of exciting pairs. I watched some of their matches at the All Japan, so it's going to be really interesting to see which one of those pairs comes through, and also how Hiroyuki Endo, in his experience, how he can actually help them and develop them. So yeah, plenty of changes for the Japanese team. 3 out of their 5 disciplines have changed. Their head coach, and obviously their head coach Park Ju-bong has changed. So yeah, going to be very interesting to see how that affects the team and how that plays out as 2025 progresses. So looking to Indonesia now, they've had even more changes. Every single coach within their coaching lineup has changed as far as I can see. Big ones being that Heri IP, who was the former head coach for the men's doubles team, one of the most successful men's doubles coaches ever, who's coaching the mixed doubles, is no longer there. He has resigned, and there are rumours that he is going to move to Malaysia to coach the men's doubles team there. That would be very interesting if he did that. But the head coach of the men's doubles, Ariona Miranat, who is always number 2 to Heri, has also been replaced. He's no longer in any role within the Indonesian national team. So that's 2 huge losses, I would say, for the Indonesian team. And going to be very interesting to see how the people that come in to replace them do with the team. Because Indonesian men's doubles was going through a little bit of a slump last year. They still did really well, but as far as the standards that they set, it was a little bit of a low point. However, the 2 new pairings that they put together after the Olympic Games definitely showed some early promise. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the new coach comes in. Can he continue developing those 2 pairs, as well as obviously maintaining their top pair of Alfian and Ardianto? So that's going to be interesting. And another big interesting coaching one, the one that really caught my eye within all of this, was that the men's singles has also changed. So Irwan Shah has resigned, he's moved, he's gone to India, and he's been replaced by Mulyo Handoyo. If you don't know that name, then he's most famous for being Taufik Hidayat's coach. So Taufik Hidayat obviously holds him in high regard. He achieved all his big wins with him, and I believe Taufik even threatened the PBSI that he would leave the national team if he wasn't allowed to have Mulyo there. Mulyo also had some very good success when he was in India. I think he was the head coach when Srikanth had his best years. So he's a very experienced coach, someone that knows how to create amazing and top-level champions, someone who knows how to create a player that can win the major competitions, which is something that the men's singles team in Indonesia do need. They've got incredibly talented players in Christie and Ginting. They've also got a very interesting upcoming player, Awi Farhan, who I might talk about a little bit later in this video. So I think someone like Mulyo coming in, who's obviously had the experience of creating champions, can he do that for the current lineup? That's going to be another interesting thing. Again, like Japan, we might not see the results of this immediately. We might do, but it's definitely very, very interesting. Okay, so the other coaching change that I want to talk about is Kenneth Jonassen. Kenneth Jonassen was the Danish national head coach, but he resigned at the end of last year, and he has now been appointed as the head singles coach for Malaysia. This appointment of Kenneth Jonassen did garner a lot of media attention, and there's been a number of questions surrounding it, with the obvious one being, can he be successful? Can he take the Malaysian singles players that they have and make them into top echelon players? They've got a lot of talent in the Malaysian singles squad, especially in the men's side. Players like Lung Jun Hao and Justin Ho and Ung Zeong if he ever gets back from his injuries. But you probably would say that they're not quite right at the top of the game. They will play in the top level tournaments, and they can definitely do very well at those tournaments, but you wouldn't classify them as top 10 players. So can Kenneth Jonassen turn them into top 10 players? The obvious answer to that question is yes. Kenneth Jonassen has the experience, he has the know-how, he's done it before. He is the coach that was behind players like Victor Axelsen Anders Antonsen, Janne Jorgensen, and many others. All players that he helped make get to the top of the world. So there's no reason to say that he can't do the same in Malaysia. Well, obviously it's not as easy as that, because obviously there's going to be, between Denmark and Malaysia, cultural differences, and obviously differences in approach to badminton and playing styles. And also you've got all the political side to it as well. So there's a lot of factors going to be going into this. How is Kenneth Jonassen, for me, going to be able to take what he did well in Denmark and kind of mix it with what the Malaysians know and what works well for them? How is he going to blend those two styles together, those two cultures together, to make something successful? Now, I don't know Kenneth Jonassen personally. He was the head coach in England when I was a player, and I did have a few sessions with him. And I know for a fact that he's a very good coach. I also know that he is a very clever and thoughtful person. And so he's probably already been thinking about how is he going to approach this? How is he going to take what worked well, what he knew he could find success in with Denmark, and apply it to Malaysia? So yes, there's huge question marks over how's he going to do it. But I don't think there should be a question over, is he capable of doing that? He's definitely thought this through. Obviously, there are going to be things that come along the way that he wasn't prepared for. But Kenneth Jonassen will definitely go into that role highly motivated, highly prepared. And with both those things, he is very, very capable of doing great things for Malaysian singles. Yeah, I'm not quite sure whether we'll get the answer fully to this, like I said earlier about Japan and Indonesia in 2025, but I wouldn't be surprised if by midway through the year we start to see some of those, we do start to see a few little answers to some of those questions. But yeah, the big ones are, can he be successful, and how is he going to approach this whole situation? How is he going to go about it? It's going to be a massive change for him, a huge challenge, but I know that he'll be up for it. And that he is a kind of guy that will go in prepared to do it. He's not going to go in pig-headed, bull-headed and go, this is what I did in Denmark and look how successful it was. We must now do it in Malaysia. I know that he's going to take, or try to take, the best of both worlds and work out what's the best solution and what's going to be best for his players and what's the best to make them into champions, basically. So yeah, no, this one for me is probably one of the most exciting appointments, and one that I'm going to be definitely keeping a close eye on. Okay, so the next big question I have for 2025 is, what's going to happen to Korean mixed doubles? I say that because this is an important question for me, and a really interesting one. And that is because up until this year, Korea, for the last 6-7 years, Korea have had two main mixed pairs, two very successful ones. Seo Seung-jae and Cha Yu-jung, the reigning world champions, and Kim Won-ho and Jun Ryu-yeon, the reigning Olympic silver medalists. These two pairs, like I just said, have brought great success to Korea in the mixed doubles discipline, but they're two pairs that are no longer playing together. And it seems that three of those players, Seo Seung-jae, Kim Won-ho and Jun Ryu-yeon, aren't even going to be playing mixed doubles anymore. They're literally going to be focusing on the level doubles events. So it leaves me with obviously the question of what's going to happen to Korean mixed doubles. Is there, and some other questions as well. So is there a new pair on the horizon that I don't know of? Or is there a new pair in the wings that are going to come in and take the mixed doubles world by storm? Are the Korean coaches kind of putting mixed doubles to the side and going, okay, we're just going to focus mainly on the doubles? That seems quite a ludicrous question to ask, because obviously Korea have historically been the one team that have actually put players in both events more so than any other nation. So it kind of seems kind of silly, and it's a discipline that they've had historically great success in. So it seems unlikely that they've just gone, we're just going to forget the mixed doubles for a bit and just focus on the doubles. So yeah, it leaves me with a number of big questions, and a one that branches off that's quite specific to 2025 is, will this actually affect their chances at the Sudirman Cup? The Sudirman Cup obviously being the World Mixed Team Championships, where you play one match of each discipline. So every single discipline matters. So will Korea not having a top pair in the mixed doubles hamper their chances? I mean, the mixed doubles has always been an event they've done really well in. An event where when they've done well at the Sudirman Cup, they've usually done well in. So are they kind of sacrificing their chances by not having a top mixed doubles pair? Now, of course, with the Sudirman Cup, they could easily put in a scratch pairing. They will obviously they've got plenty of players that they could, whoever they put together could be a pair that could beat anyone in the world. But obviously, if they get into that competition, they wouldn't have had much tournament play in mixed doubles events. So that could actually have an impact on them and their chances. So yeah, I'm got plenty of question marks over Korea and their mixed doubles department. If any of you have any answers to this, whether there's a new pair in the wings, I know Cha Yu-jung is taking some time out to recover from injuries, but does she have a new partner that has potential to be a world beater, a world champion? Or will, like, maybe Kim Won-ho and So Seung-jae or Jun Na-yeon, will one of them or all of them switch back to mixed doubles at some point? Definitely seems to be that they're going to be going on just to one event, focusing on one discipline. Unlikely they're going to go back to playing both of them at the same time. So yeah, plenty of questions for me. If any of you have any answers, please do enlighten me in the comments. But this is definitely something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on throughout 2025, and hopefully we get answers sooner rather than later. So the next big question is, can there be any player or pair in the men's disciplines that can truly dominate this year? If we look at 2024, the men's disciplines were incredibly open. If you go back to the World Tour Finals or any video over the last year where I've tried to make any sort of prediction, the men's events were very difficult. I only have to look at the Malaysia Open draw this year and go down the men's singles event and the men's doubles and just go, okay, these pairs and players are like the favourites, but anyone else in this draw could beat them. So is that going to change in 2025, or is it going to stay the same? There's, again, like all these questions, a number of questions that branch off it. Can Victor Axelsen, who was the last dominant force in men's singles, reclaim that dominance? Interesting, just to quickly talk about Victor Axelsen. This links to the first question, the coaching changes. He has employed Peter Gader to join his team. So Peter's obviously someone that had great success in later years. Victor is moving into his later years now. So what kind of impact will Peter have? Can Peter be the guy that helps Victor reclaim that dominance and answer that question for me? Other things like a pair like Go Safei and Nur Azudin, who had a great 2024. Obviously, they're independent players now. Can they move that into 2025? If they show the sort of level they had, could they be a pair that dominates? There's plenty of other pairs, Liang Wei Kang and Wang Chan they give me that vibe, the potential to be a pair that could also do that. Ranki Reddy and Shetty are also a pair that could do that. Again, I'm kind of trying to answer that question is kind of proving the fact that how open the men's disciplines are. So is there going to be in 2025 a pair or player that takes the discipline by storm? Are they going to take the bull by the horns and become the out-and-out number one? Or will it be a few players that branch off and we finally get that kind of, these are our top five. These are our 5 best pairs or best singles players in the world? Because right now, very difficult to pick a top 5 in any of them. For me, my gut tells me that I don't think it's going to change. I think we're going to see much of what we saw last year, this year, where the men's disciplines are going to be like this and very open. But I'd love to be proved wrong. It'd be really interesting to see if anyone can up their game and like I said, take it to the next level and truly dominate their discipline. So yeah, really interesting for me. Get in the comments, let me know if you think that we're going to see the same sort of openness in 2025 as we saw in 2024, or will we see someone take it to the next level? And if so, who are the players and pairs that you think will do that? Okay, so the next question it's related to one of the biggest competitions that's going to be going in through 2025, and that is the Sudirman Cup. And the question I have is, can anyone stop China making it title number 14? Well, very, very difficult. I think most people's answers would be no. China are the top team in the world. They have won the last 3 editions, and I think ever since the turn of the century, they've only been defeated like 2, maybe 3 times in the Sudirman Cup. And the fact that also this year is going to be held in China, and China are very difficult to defeat on home soil. Yeah. Can anyone defeat them? Yes, there are some teams that definitely have potential. You only need to win 3 out of the 5 disciplines, and teams like Korea, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, all have, and Thailand, all have kind of potential to be able to defeat China. But with China having like world number 1s and 2s in every single discipline, so they have not only a strong player that they'll put in, or a pair they'll put in, but they have backups so that, say in the group stages or in certain ones, they can rest players to keep them fresh. It's just going to be very difficult to beat them. I think what it's going to take to defeat China is going to kind of be like a result that we saw when Korea defeated them in 2017, where, you know, nerves or pressure got to the China team, and, you know, a team comes along like Korea that played with no pressure and kind of had like the tournament of their lives, and they had a few matches on that day. They were like firing all cylinders. I think it's going to take something like that. It's going to take like a monumentous effort from one team, or a day where everything is going in their favor for them to defeat China. Because I think, you know, China are the top team. They've got every single discipline covered. They're the only team that you could probably claim has every discipline covered. Every other team, top team, has at least 1 discipline, possibly 2, where they have a weakness, where they're unlikely to win many matches, and that just compiles pressure on the rest of the team. So the fact that China have depth throughout all the disciplines, so they can rest their players, they can keep them fresh, and the fact that even if they were to lose one match, they're still confident they can win every single discipline, every single rubber. That, and the fact that it's in China, it's just going to be very difficult. And I think you'd have to be pretty brave to bet against China becoming the Sudirman Cup champions again. But if they weren't, then what a story that would be. What do you think? Can anyone stop China becoming Sudirman Cup champions for the 14th time? Okay, so for me, next big question is, can the players that made a huge breakthrough in 2024 back that up in 2025? The 2 main players I'm talking about here are Alex Lanier of France and Tomoka Miyazaki of Japan. They had amazing 2024s. It was their breakthrough year. I think the Eddie Chung Rising Star Award was between those 2. It did go to Alex Lanier of France. I think mainly because he won the Japan Open, but also because he was from France, not a badminton powerhouse. For me, what's going to be really, really important for those 2 players, and actually I think 2025 is even more of an important year for them than 2024, is when a player makes a breakthrough and does well like those 2 did, obviously the top players stand up and take notice. They're going to study that player's game more. They're going to take them more seriously. There's going to be better game plan tactics put in place to defeat them. And so usually what you see when players have a breakthrough year, a really big breakthrough year, and I'm not talking about like winning a 300 or whatever, but like doing what Alex and Tomoka did, is that the next year they tend to struggle a bit, because not only is there the pressure on themselves that they want to back that up, they know they want to keep progressing and keep moving forward and keep having those highs. So that's a huge amount of pressure they're going to put on themselves. But like I just said, all the rest of the top players are going to take them far more seriously and going to come in far better prepared. And usually that means they're going to have to take some losses. So for me, this year, 2025, is going to be really interesting to see how Alex and Tomoka do, how they handle that situation, how they continue to progress through the year, and if they can still have some good results. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle that whole situation. And maybe even more than that, it's going to really show us it's going to give us an indication of whether or not they have real future potential. Because sometimes players can have this amazing breakthrough and then they have this inevitable difficult follow-up where the top players are taking it more seriously and they tend to fall away. So if that happens to these guys, Tomoka and Alex, and they start to maybe not have the best 2025, can they still come back from that and do even better in the future going forward? So there's a huge amount of tests for these 2 players, these 2 young players in 2025, and I really can't wait to see how they handle it. I think both of them My impression is that they're going to handle it well. That's not to say, when I say that, it's not to say they're going to have as good a results they had in 2024. They might. But I think that they're both players that will handle it and will push forward even more far further into the future than 2025. There's some other players and pairs that had what you could call breakthroughs in 2024, or they kind of pushed up another level. So can they then carry that on? Go Sufei and Nurzudin, I mentioned them earlier in the video. They had a great 2024. Obviously, they're independent players now. So how are they going to push on in 2025? Can they get even higher in the rankings? Can they truly establish themselves as like one of the top pairs? And when it comes to like the majors, like the Worlds that's this year, can they deliver a medal, if not a gold medal? Obviously, you had the two new Indonesian combinations of Leo Rolly Carnando and Bagas Maulana, and Fikri and Martin. I believe neither of those pairs are playing in Malaysia. I don't think they're fully fit. I think the coaches decided they weren't ready. But they had a great start to their partnerships. So can they push on? And obviously, that links into the first section of there's coaching changes within Indonesia. So how's this new men's doubles coach going to work with these pairs and help them push on? In the mixed doubles, I was impressed at the end with their early start between Ditchapon and Supasara. Can they continue that on into 2025? Obviously, another mixed pair is Yuta Watanabe and Maya Taguchi. I have heard rumours that Watanabe might be partnering the more established, more experienced Misaki Matsutomo. That's obviously another question itself. Which partner is Watanabe going to go with? Is he going to go with the youth of Maya Taguchi or the experience of Matsutomo? I'm not quite sure what the right answer is to that one, but that's another question, is if he continues with Taguchi, how are those two going to progress and move on? And obviously, if he starts with Matsutomo, what kind of year are they going to have in 2025? And the last player that I want to talk about is Jin Yong. He also, alongside Alex and Tomoka, was probably the other young player that had a real breakthrough. Obviously, he didn't play much in 2024, but it was what he did at the later stages, winning the China Masters with Seo Seung Jae and runner-up at the Korea Masters. I'm pretty sure that's correct, with Kim Won Ho. So obviously, he's now partnering Kam Min Hyuk. Can he have a successful partnership with him, or are the Korean coach going to change the doubles again? That's a whole other question. But how is Jin Yong going to do moving into 25? Now, obviously, more eyes are going to be on him because he did so well, and obviously, people are going to be more kind of like, okay, what's he going to do next? We now expect this level of him. So yeah, plenty of like players and pairs that you've got to keep an eye on that kind of, I wouldn't say all of them had their breakthrough in 2024 because a few of them are much more established and go further back. But as far as some of those partnerships, they were quite new in 2024 and they did really well. So can they push on in 2025? So all those players and pairs I'm going to be keeping a very keen eye on, especially, I would say, Alex Lanier, Tomoka Miyazaki, and Jin Yong. Now, I just talked about the players that had the breakthrough in 2024 and how are they going to back that up in 2025. What about players that could have the breakthrough year in 2025? One of those players I already done a video on for the BWF, the Chinese men's singles player Hu Jiayan. A very talented men's singles player. He is the Asian Junior and World Junior Champion of 2024. Obviously, he did really well at the King's Cup, Lindan's first big tournament with 8 top players in the world that were invited, and Hu got an invitation and he did really well, reaching the final. He beat Lo Kian Yu, Lakshya Sen, and almost beat Anders Antonsen. The way he played was very exciting, so it's going to be really interesting, and I believe that he made the Chinese first team at some of their trials at the end of last year or the beginning of this year. So we might start to see him being sent out to a lot of tournaments. So it's going to be quite interesting if he can have his breakthrough this year. While I'm on the subject of China, there's another pair. There's actually a pair in the mixed doubles that I'm going to keep a quite keen eye on, and that's Guo Jinwan and Cheng Fanghui. A mixed doubles pair. They're the pair that maybe more famously in 2024 were the pair that were a game in 2011 up against Chen and To and lost. But that result aside, they're a very exciting pair. I'm especially impressed with Guo. He kind of reminds me a little bit of a young Zhang Jun. I said that in a previous video, mixed with a little bit of possibly Yuta Watanabe. Maybe there's some influence there. But yeah, no, China, as we know, have a lot of very good mixed doubles pairs. And this is one of the ones that I think we might start to see more of. I'm definitely going to keep my eye on them a lot more this year than I did last year. And I think they might be able to establish themselves as the third pair in China, possibly challenging the top two. They definitely have potential there, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on them. And one other player I want to talk about, I'm not saying these are all the players that are looking for a breakthrough year or could have a breakthrough year. There's countless. But I'm going to be keeping a particular eye on Awi Farhan, the men's singles player from Indonesia. He was the World Junior Champion 2 years ago. He had a pretty good 2024, but his exploits were kind of overshadowed by Alex Lanier, who obviously won the Japan Open and had a few more like big wins over top players. So Awi Farhan, when I saw him win the World Juniors, I thought, wow, here's an exciting player. He was the first World Junior champion in the boys singles from Indonesia. He kind of like has this blend of like Ginting style speed with like a kind of a Chico Wadoyo style. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but there's definitely a lot of raw talent, and I felt that he had all the raw basics that could make him a really good men's singles player. He had so much more room to improve that it felt like the ceiling was pretty limitless for him. So I think this year, 2025, is going to be really, really important. Like I said, his 2024 was good. It's a very solid first year for a player just out of juniors. But I think if he wants to really become, I think it's going to be really interesting for 2025, because I think he's going to have to make more of a splash. And I think this is the year where, if he does well, we could actually get more answers into his like future. That's not to say that if he has a bad 2025, he's completely done for. But I think that he's going to have to push on this year. And I think we're going to have to start seeing him do well in some of those bigger tournaments, just like Alex did last year and how other players in the past have done at his stage. I think we're going to get a kind of indicator by the end of this year into what Awi Farhan's future. But he's an exciting player, an energetic player, and I think that, lots of potential, but I think 2025 is going to be quite a key one for him to make what I would call his true breakthrough. Before I end this section, obviously, like I said, there's just 3 players that I've mentioned. There are plenty of others. I know Indonesia have another boys singles player or men's singles player who did well at the who was quite instrumental in them winning the World Junior Team Championships. I can't quite remember the name off the top of my head, but he also beat Awi Farhan last year. So I think that he's definitely someone that could be worth looking at this year. But are there any others? I know there's probably plenty. So please, again, like everything in this video, get in the comments and let me know who you think might have their breakthrough year in 2025. And the last question I want to talk about is it really a question? But how is this new service rule that the BWF have implemented going to play out? If you don't know, it's the new service rule. Basically, players that would do let's say it's Victor Axelsen pretty much, any delay of serve. And this actually goes for server and receiver. So if a player's getting ready to serve, receive, and then they put their hand up, and then the serve's done and they say they're not ready, I believe that's going to be a point to their opponents. I think they're going to get faulted. And for the serve, it's undue delay, so taking too long, or that side-to-side movement is the one that kind of has grabbed most of the attention around this and gone viral, because obviously most people talk about Victor Axelsen, and there are a few others, it's not just him. But how is this going to play out? How are the service judges going to implement this new rule? I can foresee there being a lot of controversial moments based around service judges either calling it or not calling it. I really do feel for the service judges on this one. I know this rule was kind of brought in by their association as well. Obviously, it was their decision combined with the BWF. So they must be prepared, and they've probably been told, the umpires have been told, what constitutes a fault in this respect. But I think it's not quite as an objective a rule as like you're serving above the line, the height, the 115. That's quite an obvious one. I know that's quite contentious about how service judges are seeing it, but there's a clear, it's 115. Whereas this service rule, undue delay, it's a bit like when an umpire has to card someone for it. Some umpires card more easy than others. Some are stricter, some are more lenient. So it's going to do that. And I think what that might do is going to lead to confusion within the players, confusion with the fans. And I can just foresee this being one of those rules that's going to be made into like TikTok videos and Instagram reels, and I'll probably end up doing a video or doing posts about it. It's going to, I just think it's going to provide some controversial moments throughout the year. There's already enough of them. And when I saw this rule come in, I was like, oh God, here we go. This is going to kick off some fans at some point in the year. So it's going to be quite an interesting one. What do you think of this new service rule? I think in hindsight, in general, it's a pretty good rule, but it's going to be how it's implemented that's going to be interesting to me. And it's a huge question I have for 2025. Like, how are they going to do this? And how many controversies are we going to get from it? So, yeah. Let me know what you think. Okay, so that's it. That's it for the video. Like I said at the start, that's not every single question I had. I've got a document that I had for this video that is going on for like 10 pages of just question. But those are kind of like the main ones. There are a few others. I touched on a few of them throughout the video because a lot of the questions lead to other questions, which lead to other questions, which lead to other questions, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I've asked you to write comments about so many of these questions and stuff throughout this video. But to finish with, are there any big questions that you think I've left out or haven't touched on, or yeah, that you're interested to find the answer to in 2025? Yeah, any questions you have for the year, get in the comments and lay them out. Thanks for watching, everyone. I guess before I finish this video, hopefully you've watched it this far. But as far as I'm concerned, if you've got any questions of what is Ben Beckman going to do for 2025, if anyone's interested, well, I've got a packed schedule. Obviously, I'm going to do a full year of Beckman's breakdowns. I don't know how many tournaments that is, but it's going to be quite a lot. I've also got plans to do videos on a number of stars in different ways. So I did a video recently on Liliana Natsir. I want to do one on Mohamed Hassan and Hendra Setiawan, Zheng Siwei and Wang Yachong. And I've got a few other ideas as well. And I'm trying to do them in a slightly unique and better way. So lots of good things, interesting things coming from this channel in 2025. If you are wanting to support the channel, then please do like the video, share it, comment on it, and subscribe to the channel. Yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next one.